Good morning, Anne Arundel County. Good morning, America. Welcome to Promoting Don't Get Fooled Again with Class. I'm your host, Anthony Bynum. The name of our production company, the Glen Burnie Players. These are very, very exciting times here in Anne Arundel County. We're going to talk a little bit about that over the course of our show today. But first, I have to give you a heads up. Next weekend, we're not going to be able to produce a show. We'll be out in Chicago as my youngest son, Andre, is graduating from basic training from the Navy. We're very excited about that, but unfortunately, as far as the show is concerned, it's just not going to work out. A couple of notes real quickly here. Next Saturday at the John Wesley United Methodist Church, there's going to be the car show where people come in with some really nice rides. You might want to check that out. It should be fairly early in the morning, probably 8 till about 12, something like that. The night before, there's going to be a concert at John Wesley in the parking lot. It's scheduled right now. Hopefully it goes forward. My friend Wes Watkins and his group, Count the Cost, are going to be playing. So that's going to be in the evening, 7 to 9. You definitely might want to check that out because they have the horns. As far as this week's concerned, we want to give credit where credit is due. We use information from Wikipedia. Those people, as always, have come through. Wisconsin DNR. They've been a very good source lately for us. And also this www.nadiapedia, Nautipedia. They came through for us also. Before we get into the gist of the show, I want to make a couple of announcements. One announcement, this just happened just recently. In Glen Burnie proper, a building has been rededicated or renamed in honor of the great Sarah E. Carter. She was the first and to this date only elected African-American woman to the city council. So the I think it's Building North or North Building's been renamed from her honor. They did a ceremony for her this week. And just a quick note here. Councilman Carter made history when she became the first African-American woman to be elected to the Anne Arundel County Council, where she served for 8 years. In 1974, she won the county-wide selection by 13 votes. And so, to this date, is the only African-American woman to hold that position. Remember, I mentioned that a few moments ago. So good for her. Good for her. Good for her legacy. Also, there was one other thing I wanted to mention. No, I think that was the main thing. Okay, so let's go forward. People that I admire. We're going to start off by doing a little screen sharing. That's not what I want. Here we go. Okay. So this week, we're going to take a look at the life of Susan B. Anthony. She was born February 15th, 1820, and she died 3/13/1906. So I did a lot of reading about the great Susan B. Anthony, just to kind of get in tune for the show. And a couple of things stand out. One, she lived at a tumultuous time in the country's history. There were three issues that were of most important in the country. Number one was the issue of slavery, the whole one man, one woman in bondage against their will. But a second issue was the right of all Americans, men and women, to vote. That movement eventually became the women's suffrage movement. Third, a lot of people may not remember this. Well, no one's going to remember it because you weren't around. But there was a third great issue of its day. It was a temperance movement. There was a lot of alcohol being drunk in the country. And because of that, there was a lot of drunkenness, which led to often bad results. So she was in the middle of all these things. So she was born into a Quaker family, and a very strict Quaker family. And she learned the meaning of right and wrong early on. Matter of fact, by the age 17, she had collected anti-slavery petitions. In 1856, at the age of 36, she became New York State's agent for American Anti-Slavery Society. So we pretty much know that slavery was something that was practiced heavily in the South, okay, all the way from Maryland, heading farther south to Texas, I believe. Matter of fact, I think slavery was in Delaware too. Now, what's not realized, or people don't necessarily realize, that even though northern states and states in the Midwest, Rockies, etc., to those that existed at that time, may not have practiced slavery, it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody living in those states believed in the abolition of slavery. So that's an important point here. In 1851, she met most likely the most important person in her life, and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Together, they founded the New York State Temperance Society. But interestingly enough, at a convention, they weren't allowed to speak. They created a society who weren't allowed to speak. That didn't go over so well. Didn't go over so well. From there, Susan B. Anthony, most likely with help from Miss Stanton, founded the Women Royal National League. And they conducted the largest petition drive in history up to that time. 400,000 signatures they received. 400,000. You get 400,000 people to sign a piece of paper, and people have to listen to you. Now, it's interestingly, Susan B. Anthony, best that I can tell from my research, she never married, she never had children. On the other hand, Elizabeth Cady Stanton had a family and she had children. So Susan B. Anthony was able to put all her time into organizing, and that's what she was great at. She was a great organizer. She was a fantastic organizer. So let's go ahead and continue to read here. After the war, the team initiated the American Equal Rights Association, which campaigned for the equal rights for women as well as newly freed slaves. She had contemporaries at her time. I just finished reading Booker T. Washington's Up From Slavery. He knew Susan B. Anthony. Frederick Douglass knew Susan B. Anthony. They were all contemporaries. In 1868, she published a paper. It was called The Revolution. Now, unfortunately, it didn't last particularly long because you have to get funding for these things. But that led directly to the National Women's Suffrage Association. Years would pass before all women had the right to vote. In fact, it wasn't until 1878 that a senator from California, Republican senator named Sargent, introduced the 19th Amendment. But it wouldn't be ratified until 1920. But the beauty here is that some states did allow women the right to vote. So it was a slow process, but it was a process. Just to recap real quickly here, there were 3 issues of its day: abolition, women's suffrage, temperance. And they all played out. And to this day, although some of the main issues have changed, Americans still remain divided over key issues. And in many ways, that's a beautiful thing, because it takes all kinds to be part of a great society that we have here in America. So we're going to stop sharing right now, and we're going to move on. Okay. Anne Arundel County. I always want to mention something of consequence regarding Anne Arundel County. This week is no different. When you think of fine dining, you think of a combination of fine dining, history, the water. You know what I think about? I think of the Chart House, a fantastic restaurant. We go there once every couple of years. It's a fine meal. It's a fine meal. And let's give you a little bit of history here. So the Chart House itself was a boathouse, okay? Its doors officially opened in 1978. And the shipyard itself was actually owned by a John Trumpy. That's Turmpy and Sons. That was the name of the shipyard. Why is that important? Well, there's always more to the story, right? The great commentator, I'll get back to you on that because his name was me at the moment, but he was a great commentator. He always said, let's get to the rest of the story. It'll come to me. Give me a few moments. But let me read this paragraph about the history here. The Trumpy shipbuilding legacy began 5 generations ago in the coastal city of Bergen, Norway, where Casper Trumpy owned a shipyard nestled at the foot of the seven mountains. I've never been to Norway, but I'm going to gather that's a big deal there. Casper's son, John, grew up working in the family shipyard and returned to do so after earning a Navy architect degree in Berlin, Germany. Now, when Casper Trumpy passed away, John sold the business to the Bergen Gas Company. And with little left in Bergen, he moved to the States. I'm going to gather that perhaps this is around the time of World War II. Norway took a beating in World War II. They took a beating. So, after working at the New York shipyard in Philadelphia and the commercial John H. Maris shipyard in Camden, New Jersey, he formed a partnership with John H. Maris, leasing space within the yard solely dedicated to design and build of private yachts. So there it is. Fine dining, yachts, water, Annapolis, the chart house. Well, the last couple of weeks, we've been taking a look at some fine poetry submitted to us, made available to us rather, by the Wisconsin DNR. We're going to go right back to this well because it's a good one, right? So all these poems written by Nancy Franz, and they're all 5 poems inspired by Lake Superior. It's getting a little cool out there. If you're getting up early in the morning, you've noticed this. So this one we read today is called Autumn. Colors of autumn, great the sunrise, scarlet, amber, and gold. Falling home to the mother, enriching the soul, recalling summer's warmth. Frost dress moment lead to deep thought of winter preparations and unsettled adventures, forgotten yet needed, to sanely survive Lake Superior winter. Fall rains, leaf-strewn trails, a time for wool and walks, a season for renewing our earthly connections. Again, a very nice piece written by Nancy Franz. So just to recap, Susan B. Anthony. You know, when you think about our denominations, for the most part, they're all presidents. You know, they're all gone now. Ben Franklin, one of the great founders, possibly my favorite founder, he's on there. Then you have Harriet Tubman, who we're not seeing too many of those $20 denominations we were supposed to see. We have Susan B. Anthony, $2 bill. I believe she's a $2 bill. You don't see too many of those either. And Sacagawea, I think she was on a 50-cent piece. And you don't see too many of those either. Very few non-ex-presidents make it onto the currency, which is probably the way it should be, right? If you're shopping and the president of your country is on the denomination you use, you're probably not in a democracy. Well, so this has been a fun show. I really enjoyed it. Again, we won't be here next week. So for everyone here, for the Glen Burnie players, and I'm going to put that name in the notes because it still escapes me. I will remember. Steve Harvey. No, not Steve Harvey. Harvey. I'm going to find out. Anyway, until next week, until 2 weeks, for the Glen Burnie players, I'm Anthony Bynum. Yes, America. I remember now. It was the great Paul Harvey. So my apologies for not being able to remember that great name of a great, great broadcaster. In fact, when we return in 2 weeks, we're going to do people I admire, Paul Harvey. That's how we're going to make up for this. Okay, so you take care.